ISO Productions presents another instructional video tutorial from ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Well, hello and welcome back to yet another FileMaker tutorial video learning more about FileMaker. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these FileMaker tutorials over at FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video, we are taking a look at a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is user interface. We're looking at some mobile design patterns, and we're discovering some of the new UI potential found within FileMaker 13. Now, the easiest way to explain this particular video is if there is an application that is on your iOS device, or if you happen to use an Android device, there are all kinds of different metaphors that people are coming up with in terms of how to convey the user interface. So this is very much a FileMaker Go type of video, and we're going to be taking a look at one of the most popular metaphors in the mobile space and how to implement within FileMaker. Let's take a look at the file. Alrighty, so here is what we have going on. We have in front of us the FileMaker file that we're going to be working with, something I just named Mobile Metaphors, where I'm actually going to be implementing all of my different mobile type of implementations for mobile design within FileMaker. Then over here we have Reflector, which is an application allowing me to show my iPhone. Now the solution that's opened is YouTube, and what we're taking a look at today in particular is this little icon right here. Whatever you want to call this, it's a list view icon, it can also be a more icon. Conventionally within FileMaker, it's list view. You're going to go to a completely separate layout. But in this case, in YouTube, when I tap this, you can see that what happens is we get a slide to the side, and then we can actually scroll through all of our different options, all of the different categories within YouTube. I also have that little arrow that you can see where we've got this sign in and a down arrow and a settings arrow. So within mobile UI design, typically you're going to be quote-unquote hiding less frequently used items. And you want to bring all of your content front and center. And that's exactly what this is doing. When I tap on that icon again, which I did, I'm going to tap here and it goes to the side. And then you tap there again and it goes back, exactly what you would expect. We're going to simply implement that within FileMaker with sliders. In fact, as I switch here to the FileMaker application, we can see that I have this loaded right next to it, and when I tap on that little list view, of course we get that slide out, and then here I have a portal which allows me to scroll. And this happens beautifully, especially using FileMaker's animations. Now there's a few other things that go on in order to make this happen, but there's a really easy way to implement this, and that is basically using the new slide control or the sliders and then just turning on some settings. So we'll be taking a look at that. Some of the other conventional things that I like on mobile, you can see the little skull icon that I put all the way down at the bottom here. That actually is simply just a popover, and you can see that's really simple, where it allows us to toggle the toolbar and then have some other options. In this case, close the file. Now I'm going to toggle the toolbar on because I've turned FileMaker's default toolbar off, which we can now see. That took place or covered over the toolbar that I have at the bottom, or in fact it takes space of the toolbar because I can now scroll this screen as you can see. So what I want you to recognize is that as I show this record indicator where it shows record 1 of 18, FileMaker has implemented a right to left movement for your records. And in fact, when I tap on the little icon that we have right there for actually moving from record to record, what you're going to see is you're going to see that FileMaker is doing this big swipey move where it actually goes from one record to the next. Now that may not necessarily be the metaphor that you actually would like to use. So let's scroll down and I'll turn off the toolbar, or I'll toggle it so it's hidden. Let's say in your FileMaker solution for FileMaker Go, you've got that hidden, but you now need record navigation. Well, you can see up in the very top that I have this record navigation little checkbox right there. Well, I've got the word record navigation, and then I've got this little circle where you can actually just tap on that circle. So watch what happens when I tap on the circle. What I get is I get the opportunity using FileMaker's new feature of being able to hide and show items, the ability to show a record indicator. Now you can see that I have the little up arrow and the little down arrow down at the bottom here, which allows me to move from record to record. And that's actually what's happening. What I like about this is you can actually put this directly over whatever you're looking at, and everything is going to be able to be calculated for you. You can see that I've got the location indicator, that little green dot. I also have the maximum number of records that I'm looking at. That 18 right there is the found count out of whatever records I have. So it's not the total records in the database, it's how many are found. And you can see up here up at the top that I've also used this the opportunity to show where you're at. You're on record 13 out of the 18. Another nice feature that I've added into this is the ability to tap on this record navigation in order to actually control where you actually jump to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap in this area right here, and you can see that what happens is as I tap, I can actually get this to jump to different areas relative to the point where I'm at and the point where it's the maximum number of records. I should say between 1 and the maximum found count that you have. Now this is very easy to accomplish with FileMaker 13's new abilities to capture gesture taps. And that is the ability to tap once, twice, or 3 times. In fact, in this area right here, underneath my cursor, I want you to pay attention to what actually happens when I tap on the screen. You can see that when I tap, I'm getting an update. Let me move that off to the side. I've tapped in that location on the screen. I've tapped in that location. All these numbers change. In fact, when I do a double tap, notice that just underneath the word tap, we get now 2. If I tap with 2 fingers, notice that that's a single tap with 2 fingers. And if I do it with 3 fingers, I get a single tap with 3 fingers, and the location that we have here, the X and the Y, what happens is it actually determines the center point between all of the different taps that you actually make. If it's just a single tap, then it actually just grabs those coordinates. So as I walk through explaining how I've accomplished this, for those developers who want to just jump ahead and sort of understand things, the premise of this video is simply this. I defined an object, in particular, this object right here on the side of the screen. This object, oops, accidentally rotated my phone there. That object is, well, that actually made it nice and big. This object right here is simply a repeating calculated field. And that the only purpose for that is being able to know that I have a number of slots here that are going to represent the percentage of where I am relative to the found set. But this object, this repeating calculated field, is actually defined as an object with an object name. Using that object name, I'm able to use FileMaker's get layout object attributes. And I'm able to pull the top, the left, the right, and the bottom. Knowing that those are going to be my predefined area of where I want to intercept or get a tap, that's when I can actually take action. In fact, if I turn the record navigation off and I tap on the screen, which I'm doing now, I'm going to tap here, now I'm going to tap here, now I'm going to tap here, you can see that there is no update. So we're going to walk through how you actually make these things happen. There's a lot of things going on, especially my slider right there and being able to do this. This is pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in terms of going through this because it's very easy to accomplish. But the record navigation and adding in that is a different mobile metaphor that makes it really nice for you to be able to add these types of things into your solution. The great thing about this video and the great thing about subscribing to ISO FileMaker magazine is the fact that I took a number of hours in order to build this in. I even started putting a theme to it, and you get this file if you're a subscriber, and you can just use it right away. You can copy and paste this into your own solution, you can import the theme, and you're ready to go. So let's take a look at some of the details within this file and understand how this is actually something you can implement into your own solution. Okay, so we're going to dissect these few things that I've showed you in terms of what you can implement into your mobile solutions. Now clearly you can do this just as easily on iPad as you can on for the iPhone. Now one thing I want to point out is the record navigation This whole design, the slider included, has been designed for the portrait orientation, and FileMaker 13 now provides us with a get function. That get function allows us to get the actual orientation and do things based on the switching of the orientation. When we go into layout mode here on FileMaker 13, and we take a look at our layout setup, go to our layout setup, and we'll take a look at our script triggers. Can't make that dialog bigger, but that's all right. You're going to see that we have two new script triggers. In particular, we've got on layout size change. So when the device is actually reoriented, no matter what it is, you get the opportunity to actually say what's going to happen. Now, what makes this really nice is the fact that we can, when the device is oriented and we determine that it is landscape mode, we can actually go to a different layout or display a dialog that says this layout has been designed to work in portrait mode only. Or we can take the user to a completely different layout when they're in landscape mode, which is really nice. Otherwise, we always had to design our layouts very, very small in order to accommodate both orientations. Now, the next one that we have down here at the bottom is on gesture tap. Now you can see that the script that I'm running for this particular one is on gesture tap. I simply name my scripts the exact same name as the triggers that are going to call them. As soon as I go beyond one within a solution, then I simply name it specific to what the layout is. For example, on gesture tap customers would belong to the customer's layout, and because I can only have one on gesture tap, I would know instantly by the name of the script that it is the on gesture tap script for the script trigger on the customer's layout. And hopefully that makes sense to you. So as I zoom out here, what we're going to be taking a look is this on gesture tap. But just before we do that, we're going to recognize that, as I stated, this simply swiping, I almost said swooping or swapping, moving from one view to another using a slider control is very advantageous in mobile design. In fact, when we go up here and we take a look at our tab panel and then hold on that, and we now have the slide control, I can add a new slide control, and this is your default slide control. It's got the dots at the bottom, a very common metaphor that was established, I think, by Apple. But everything here can be styled. When you double click, you get the slide control setup. It comes with a default of 3 at the point in time that I added this. And I can put anything I want into any of these. Just like a tab or a portal, this is a container. You can see that I have the two options of enable swipe gestures and to show navigation dots, and I can make the dots really small. So here's what I did. I simply made the dots super small because I want to maximize the area that I have available. This is the containment area right here where you can see the actual box or the boundaries. I turned off swipe gestures because I didn't want that within the FileMaker Go environment on the mobile device. I'm going to control that with a script, which is the menu button that we see right there. And I turned off the show navigation dots, which gives me a little bit more space, but still does have to accommodate for some. So when I click over here on the actual slide control, which I'll get rid of that one right there by deleting it, when I double click on this, the slide control comes up. You can see that I turned off the enable swipe, I turned off the navigation dots, and again I shrunk the size down to 1 point, super small. I only have 2 of 2 in terms of the panels because there's only 2 modes that I actually need to look at. One is the menu and one is not. You can see right here that according to the blue line down at the very bottom, what I have is I have a situation where I'm extending into the actual toolbar area down at the bottom, and that's so that the very bottom of the actual containable area of the slider allows me to contain the objects such as my record navigation. So that's very important to know. The rest of it, as I move between the two views, you can see that I'm on already by default slide 2 of 2. Now this has to do with the fact that the slide animation itself, when you move from one slide to the other, it depends on what direction you're going. So in this case, what I need to do is I need to start on slide 2 by default. That means that on the layout itself, when we go in to look at the layout setup and look at the script triggers, we have a script trigger which is an on layout enter. Now, in that on layout enter script, we go to one of the two slide controls. So when we double click and bring this back up, or with this selected, actually let me bring up the inspector palette, or bring that on screen here so that we can see what's going on. With this selected, you can see that I've given this particular object, this particular slide of the two panes in the slide control, I've given it the name of no menu. So when we switch back over to the other one, to number 1, you can see that here I've given it the name of menu because menu is actually showing. So in the first slide control, I have the actual menu. In the second slide control, I have the normal view without the menu, and that's so that I can take advantage of the script animation as I mentioned. So you can see that moving between the two here, that's exactly what would happen, is what I want to happen when I tap these buttons. So when I tap on this, all I need to do is determine, is the menu currently showing or is it not? This is very easy to do using FileMaker's getLayoutObject attribute with the isFrontTab panel setting. So let's take a look at the script of the menu. Bringing up the scripts, we can look at the script of menu toggle. Now the very first thing that we see that I've turned on is set script animation on. So by default, none of the script animations that deal with sliders or anything else that does animate is going to show when it's run within the context of a script, because the script, or all of your scripts, are assumed to run as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Speed and giving the perception that things are really quick. So you have to explicitly turn it on, which is what I've done. Now the next thing we need to do is get the current menu status. We are setting a variable named menuActive to the getLayoutObject attribute. And when we take a look at this, you can see that very easily I am simply using the isFrontPanel. That's all it is. So if the menu is the front panel, then I know what direction I'm going to be going. I'm going to be going to the no menu side of the slide control. If no menu is active and it's the inverse, then obviously I'm going to be going the other direction. So the very next step is simply this go to object. Go to the object name, and if the menu is active, like I just stated, we're going to go to the no menu slider, or pane on the slider, and otherwise we're going to default and go to the menu pane on the slider. Now because I've now gone and changed the actual view, I've changed to the opposite of where the user is at, I now need to update that variable again because I'm going to take some further steps. So I'm going to reset the variable of menuActive to the exact same thing that I set it to prior, which is the getLayoutObject attribute looking at the actual menu. We can zoom out and see that right there. These two things are pretty much the exact same thing. It's a duplicate step. I need to get the update because now what I'm able to do is I'm able to take advantage of FileMaker 13's new refresh object. So as I zoom in here, we can see that I say, these are the steps if the menu is currently showing. There are times where the portal will not necessarily update or refresh, so it really depends on what's in the portal. Let's say something has been added within the form view and you've modified the portal. Well, FileMaker on FileMaker Mobile does a lot of caching, so that portal may be cached. In fact, that's one of the nice things about this is that FileMaker does persist in its position even though you switch between sliders. So you can use a refresh window, but it's very costly. Otherwise, you're going to be using the new refresh object and refresh the object which we've given the name of the portal to portal.menu. I've also taken the opportunity to throw in a goTo object which automatically makes that object active and ready to be scrolled because it now has the focus. So if we take a look at this on the actual mobile device, and we're over here, let me bring that up. If I tap and we can see that it moves over, you can note that when I move up all the way to the bottom where I've got the more showing and I now close this, but I reveal again, you can see that FileMaker remembered its position, which is really, really nice in terms of remembering the scroll that was on that portal. It does not reset. So that's pretty much all there is to the menu option. You're simply switching between two different views. Now, some other additional advice I have on this is that on this portal, you can do all kinds of things. In fact, let's switch over to the reflector again and take a look at what's going on. When I tap on the actual item, you can see that it's hard to see, but what I have here is that this dashboard is actually a more bold. Let's see if I can zoom in here. It is a more bolded text, and that's being done with conditional formatting as opposed to this item right here. But as I zoom back out, you can see that when I tap, I actually get a record indicator, also a new feature in FileMaker 13, that allows me to indicate that this is the currently selected row. Now I can use a script trigger on anything that's within this portal or on the portal itself in terms of when it's entered and so forth. But what I want to do oftentimes is I want to use conditional formatting on these in order to show differing areas. In fact, if we switch back over to the YouTube, in this particular case, what it's using is using a nice translucent effect. It's got something underneath, some type of pattern or design, and of course you can use translucency on your FileMaker solution, but there are some sidebar menus where you get a differentiation between what's selected, what might be a header area versus sub-items that you can actually click on, and you can control all of that using FileMaker's conditional formatting. It's a really nice feature to this whole system. And again, that's simply a matter of going over in your FileMaker solution, choosing your conditional formatting, and then actually applying that. You can see that if a menu type is 0, then I'm actually changing the font name. I'm going from Avenir Medium to Avenir Heavy, which makes it a subtly bolder, but hard to distinguish. But for any other type of menu, you can turn things on. So for example, I can set the fill color to be gray. Go into browse mode, and there you go. All of my menus that are 1, except for more, which is considered special. I think you get the idea. You can basically control what you want in terms of how things are displayed with your conditional formatting. So as I turn this off, we can go over and take a look at our next feature, which is actually intercepting taps and doing something with them. So let's take a look at that. And now for the second part of this video, or the second technique in this particular file. It is the record navigation that we show when we're over on the mobile and we tap on that little icon and that record navigation comes up. Now there's really only two different things that are going on here. One is tapping the little circle icon that allows the record navigation to turn on and off, which is hiding using FileMaker 13 feature. And the other one is intercepting the taps, which you can see right there in that area that I showed you, and tapping on this side area and making it jump to different points. Now this isn't as precise as I would like to, but I'm going to show you, like it to be, but I'm going to show you how you can sort of play with and control the precision of where you tap within an object. The whole point of me showing you this is not just for the purpose of the record indicator navigation tool itself, but the fact that you can now control, based on tap areas, whatever you want to do. In essence, you don't even have to have buttons on your layout if you're going to. Now, I suggest you put buttons because that's what's easiest to work with within layout mode, to know that there's an actual object there that is a button. But if you wanted to, in theory, you could code a whole mobile solution just based purely on taps and put text on the screen, and based on a tap in that area, be able to initiate a script in order to do something. So let's take a look at what's going on behind the scenes for this. Now the first part is this one right here, the record navigation clicking on this particular object. Now there are a number of ways that you can do buttons now because of being able to hide things. But the tried and true that came along in FileMaker 12 is still a great way to go about things. This is actually a button object when I go into layout mode. And you can see that the button object, when we take a look at appearance, simply has this big check mark embedded within it. Now it's 2 times, or it's actually 3 times, I believe, the actual size that it's going to end up at. When we look at the position, it's a 28 by 28, but that graphic, I believe, is something like a 72 or larger than that, this graphic is, and that's because it's scaled down. When we choose this option of scale to fit will size things down proportionally within the button so that it will look good on Retina or higher resolution displays where we're showing more pixels. So that's what you want to do. Now the trick to get rid of it is simply to use the conditional formatting that we had available within FileMaker 12 and simply setting the fill color to this transparent object, or the no fill option. So what happens is I'm using simply a global variable called recordNav.on. So it's either going to have a true value or it's not. And using not, I'm able to say if the record nav is not on, then I want to set the fill color to transparent, therefore making the actual object or the graphic inside go away. But yet the object, the button itself, still has, according to the styles that I've put on it, it has a round white circle, which you can clearly see, which is controlled in the graphic right there with the solid 2-point line white. Now when I click this, it's running the script of, as I open the scripts, toggle record nav, and I want you to recognize that not everything in here is required. In fact, you can make a toggle button with a graphic just like I have right there without even using a script. You can use simply the refresh object function within FileMaker 13 and it alone directly on the button. That's because you can use a let function in order to set the variable of record nav and toggle it. Now I'm using it for I made a script here for the purpose of being able to see other information as I'm developing. In particular, I'm setting a global variable of tapNav to get layout object attributes of the rect, which is the rectangle of the tapNav area, looking at its bounds. That's everything that you can see right here, where tapNav in this area shows up. So when I'm in browse mode and I actually click on the record navigation, you can see that the bounds right here are actually displaying. So that I have 848, which is, this is where this exists on my particular Macintosh. 222, which is the top right there. 890, which is along the edge right here, and 551 at the bottom right here. Over on the mobile device, you can see that these numbers are going to be completely different because this is all relative to the 00 point, or wherever FileMaker is starting. I don't know if 00 is up here or if it's right here, but it's starting at that point and then determining what are the boundaries of this particular object. So therein lies the core of any type of tap interception. If you're going to intercept a tap and you want to know that it's within a certain area, what you need to do is you need to get the bounds of the area first. Now the get layout object attribute has a number of features. You can get the layout object attribute, you can grab the bounds, which is going to get the left, top, right, and bottom, and then one other value, I forget what the 0 stands for, or you can actually put in the explicit value of right versus left versus top, etc. And I didn't mean to accept that. We'll put it back to bounds. You can see that I'm substituting out because the bounds actually returns a space delimited all of the different values, and I'm simply turning it into a return delimited list right there. By putting it into a global variable, I can look at it on screen as I'm actually developing. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you can do everything directly within a refresh object and move everything that's in this set variable into the beginning part of a let function directly on the actual object itself, thereby eliminating the need for a particular script. So once I've toggled this, I now need to determine whether or not the side should show. We know that we're pushing it into a global variable called recordNavOn, and if we take a look at all of these by zooming in, we can see that the new FileMaker 13 visibility indicator actually shows me that there is a calculation that controls whether these are visible. So if we take a look over on the Data tab, we can see that all of these have pretty much the exact same setting, and it is this right here where we take a look at I don't know, I can't make the inspector any bigger, but we'll zoom in and take a look at it. We're saying if the record nav is not on, or the get window mode does not equal, in fact, we can't see that. Let me bring up the calculation for that. Calculation, there we go. If get window mode does not equal 0. So by default, get window mode 0 is browse mode. So if we're in any mode other than browse mode, what we're going to do is we're going to hide this particular object. And if the record nav is not on, then we're not going to be showing that as well. So that's basically how things are working with regards to the visibility, and it's simply applied to all of these objects all down the way. One thing to note about the hide object when is if I actually use a hide object on a slider or a portal, everything that's contained within that object, that will also hide as well. But in this particular case, I need to actually apply that to all of them. One trick you can do, which is a little bit tricky, is you can group all of these and then only have the one setting of the hide group when, and that should work as well. Now the rest of what's going on here is simply a custom function in order to get the bounds of this object, the clickable area, and the fact that this is a repeating function or a repeating calculation. So let's take a look at that. The position tab is going to show me that the name of the actual repeating field is quite simply rect tap nav right there. So that is my defined object of the rectangle that has the tap navigation where I want to get the bounds of that object and I need to receive that. So what I've done is if we take a look at the script, is we go to the on gesture tap. This is a script trigger that's being run on the on gesture tap script trigger. Now the very first thing that you ever want to do pretty much with any script trigger is you want to have what's known as a guard clause. And the guard clause means I'm going to guard whatever is going to follow after this initial clause, and if I'm not met, if my conditions aren't met, the first thing I'm going to do is bail out of this script. You don't want to have a lot of complex if conditional logic to get all the way at the bottom of something before you determine, oh, no, I want to get out. So the very first thing we say is we're going to exit the record navigation if it isn't even on. So if record nav global variable is not true, we're just going to exit the script and we're going to save all processing power that FileMaker might otherwise do. So if the record nav is on, then this condition of exit script never actually fires. This guard clause never initiates. And the first thing we want to do is we want to determine what is the tap object that we're going to use to determine the bounds where the taps are actually happening. And again, remember, you can do this with multiple objects on your layout if you want to on FileMaker Go. So there's my name of rect tap nav, and I'm assigning it into a variable called tap object. The next thing that I need to do is I need to get all of the tap information. I'm doing that right here with the get trigger gesture info. This is the companion function that you use with the on gesture trigger. The on gesture tap will use the get trigger gesture info, and I'm storing that into the variable of taps. So now I need to get the X and the Y. So here I use the tap X and I get as number get value taps 4. Now this is a very important thing right here. In fact, you can see a note that says gesture info, the trigger gesture info I should say, is returned as text. Very important. Make sure to convert your X and Y to numeric before you actually do anything. Now in my custom functions, I typically protect myself by putting conversions there as well, or what they call coercions. So this X and the Y, I need to actually tap that, and you're going to see something on the Y in particular at the end here. You can see that I've put in this note that says tweak the vertical position of the tap for better accuracy. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the Y position, but I'm subtracting 10 in order to basically tweak this. And you can play with these numbers. You can add numbers, you can you can tweak the X and the Y axis of whatever the tap is based on your perception of how the tap should work within the tap area that you're working with. And that's basically what I want to give you, because I also do this within my custom function as well. With knowing the object bottom in relation to where the actual user clicks, I can actually determine a percentage, because the bottom is 100%, or the last record. And the click is relative to that. It's a percentage in terms of its relationship to the bottom and the top. So I really only need two numbers. I could do it from the top, or I could do it from the bottom. I chose to do it from the bottom. Now here I'm setting the field to the taps just for the purpose of debugging, not necessary for the functionality of the solution. The very next thing is, since I passed the guard clause, knowing that record navigation was on, and I'm running the rest of my script, I now need some determination of whether or not I want to do something based on the fact of whether or not I'm within the area that I've specified. So here when we take a look at this, you're going to see that there are two different requirements. First is I'm using the new get window orientation, which we can see right there, which allows me to determine whether or not I'm actually in portrait mode. And the way that get window orientation works is 0 is for square or for web direct. For mobile window orientation, anything that is positive means that you're in portrait mode and either upright or upside down, and anything that's negative is for landscape mode, either to the left or to the right. And then finally I have another condition that says and if the click is within. So this click within is a custom function that you can use where you specify the name of an object, which it will get the bounds of that object within the custom function, and then you just pass the tap X and the tap Y. So this click within, which could be named tap within, but could also be adapted to work on desktop as well, is completely up to you. You can rename it to tap within if you like that particular naming better. But essentially what we're doing is we're passing it an object where we're going to grab the bounds, an X and a Y position, and we're going to determine if we're within that. And that's pretty simple in terms of how it actually works. We finally set a variable of a record percentage, and that is, as you can see right here, that is the difference that I'm taking between tap Y, where they've tapped, and the object bottom. Now some of these values, because it's not working the exact way that I want, in fact, anyone who has a copy of the file from this video article, work with this and tweak it and help me improve it, make it better. That's what I'm doing within the custom function itself. I'm accounting for variances that FileMaker isn't necessarily accounting for, at least as of this rev of FileMaker. And what I mean by that is I don't believe that FileMaker is accounting for this particular toolbar. And I think this toolbar is about 31 pixels high in terms of where it starts. Because what I noticed is as I would tap in the top part of this solution, it actually wouldn't receive or trigger the script because it thought that the click wasn't within. As soon as I shifted it up by 31 pixels, it became a click within, and the click at the bottom would also take the user all the way to the bottom. It really takes a little bit of tweaking. I didn't in particular spend a whole lot of time figuring out and investigating what exactly is FileMaker using in terms of a reference. On the desktop, you have all of the desktop, but the menu bar up here isn't accounted for, and that's something like 22 pixels on the Mac, and I don't know what it is on Windows. And the same thing may be applying on mobile as well. But you can see that finally we simply go to the record that we want to based on the percentage that we got. So, and I have a custom dialog here for the purpose of debugging. So by going to the actual percentage or going to a record based on the percentage of the click in relation to where they click relative to the bottom, we actually get this real nice tool that we can use in order to do things. Now, this all came about because there was a FileMaker there was mobile functionality within a solution that I use where you could put your hand on, or you put your finger on the side or within a specified area and then roll it up and down. In fact, as you would drag your finger up and down, it would actually scroll or flip through records that you wanted to go to. And I thought, wow, this is really nice. And fortunately, because I do have tapping, I can actually implement that here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it up to you to really investigate the click within. It's really no big deal. We're basically saying if the X is in between the left and the right, and if the Y is in between the top and the bottom. You can see that I've got a vertical adjustment with a note here, the amount to adjust the top and bottom coordinates. I use 31 pixels because I think that's what it was. It may be a different number because I'm not getting the precision that I want out of this. But ultimately, you get the idea of how this actually works and what you can do. So there are 3 different metaphors. This one is really easy. It's simply a popover. I've seen this on some mobile solutions. You've got the slider, which is going to slide over. You can put anything on the side, static menus, fixed or dynamic menus such as this using a portal. And then over here, we have the ability to actually intercept and determine whether taps are within the area relative to what we want to do, and we can get some nice functionality by being able to implement these things into our FileMaker Go mobile FileMaker solutions. So I hope throughout the course of this video you've gotten yet more information about what you can do with FileMaker, some of the cool things. It's such a nice environment. They've added so many nice things into FileMaker 13. It just really rounds out the environment, and I can't wait to see what they add in the next version. So, as always, I wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.